Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Friday, February 12th meeting of the Westwood School Building Committee. To get started, I will do a roll call attendance. Ken Aries.
Here.
Brian Baer.
Here.
Allison Borchers.
Here.
Chris Coleman.
Here.
Sarah Cronin.
Here.
John Cummings.
Here.
Charlie Donahue.
Here.
Pam Dukeman.
Here.
Mary Kate Ferreira.
Here.
Yeah, I thought I saw you. Jen Flanders. Abby Hanscom.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Nancy Hyde.
Here.
Lema Jean-Baptiste.
Here.
Josepha Jowdy.
Here.
Carol Lewis and Michelle Miller cannot join us. Tony Mullen. Emily Parks.
Here.
And Amanda Phillips cannot join us as well. Okay, thank you. I'd also like to recognize we have a guest, Chief Silva, Chief of the Westwood Police, joining us today. Thanks for joining.
Oh, good morning.
And I also see Chief Deckers, Chief of the Westwood Fire Department, with us today as well. So thank you for joining.
Nope. Good morning.
Always great to have you. I would like to recognize the live stream to provide real-time public access to the activities of the School Building Committee, which is available online at www.westwood.k12.ma.us/live. And the meeting is also being recorded for later broadcast on Westwood Media Center's platforms. So thank you very much to Westwood Media Center. Okay, so I'm going to jump in with the chair's update. And just to sort of recap where we are, as you recall, at last week's meeting, we had the project budget review, and we mentioned at the time that we had sort of been reviewing the site plan, Dorter, Whittier, and Compass, and we've been looking at the site plan. And what we had realized last week, and maybe a couple weeks earlier after walking the site a few times, is that in our quest to sort of maximize the conservation of the land and to minimize the ledge impact, the building had shifted a little bit too close to the neighbors. And that's the Laura Lane neighbors. And so we began looking at shifting the building away because we really felt that was the right thing to do. And now in schematic design is the time to do it. So at the time we did, over the next few days, we did sort of a rough back of the envelope estimate of what we thought that shift would cost. And the first presentation that went out to you showed an increase of about $500,000. That was based on that sort of back of the envelope estimate. And in the meantime, we had asked a cost estimator to give us a little bit more of a realistic cost. And he came back after the packets had gone out. He came back surprising us with about 1.5 million to do this shift. So Compass and Dorter and Whittier had a lot of discussions and really sharpened their pencils and looked at that design and said, you know what, we think that if we focus more on providing an adequate buffer, instead of focusing on, okay, what's the amount of feet we're shifting the building, that gave them a little bit more flexibility in terms of where they could place the building. They really focused on the buffer, and they focused on where they could most effectively put the building. And they believe that a realistic number is about 900,000 to shift this building. So I want to emphasize that this isn't really, this shouldn't really be viewed as an added cost to the project. I think if we had designed this building sort of where we have it cited now, this just would have been the project cost. But we're catching it now, which is the right time to catch it. And therefore, we sent a revised presentation to you yesterday that shows the shift plan. We're going to get into that. We're also going to get into some of the reasons for why it's costing, this shift would increase the project costs. I also want to emphasize that there's a lot more work to be done once we get into design development. The design right now is only about 25% done. So there's still a lot of opportunities for value engineering, for looking at cost savings to come. And finally, I think that this is really the right thing to do for this project. We've always said that this is a community project, and we need to not only listen to feedback from the community, but look at the impact on the community of this project. And I think that this redesign is really the right thing to do, but clearly we will discuss it today. So the plan for today is to go through the revised plan with the revised numbers, and then also talk a little bit more about that bridge funding that we hope to put before town meeting. We have a slide for that as well, so we can walk through those numbers. So I think that's it for the updates in my little intro. If anyone has any questions, maybe I'll ask just to, let's get into the presentation. We can ask them during the presentation. I think it would be helpful to have the slides up. So Don, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yep, and I believe Chin has the presentation. Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Terrific. Good morning, everyone. So Chin, if you want to advance to the site plan that everyone's most familiar with.
Yeah, we had put this project schedule up just as a reminder of what the plan is, but we can get to the design.
So here's the existing plan. If looking at it, Gay Street is to the right. Laura Lane, you can see up to the left a little bit, the existing building outlined in red. And then highlighted on the site, you can see the existing fire access trail and the proposed relocated fire access trail when the building is constructed. So I think what's important about this particular plan, when you look up at Laura Lane, since we're talking about the buffer, we had some grading, some new grading that we were doing around what is the bus loop and the service access to the building. And when we did that, we had to remove some of the existing tree buffer. So as Maya mentioned, we're like, okay, we're getting a little close to the neighbors. We've lost some of the buffer. And our first move, as Maya said, was to take the building and slide it all the way down to the south west corner, about 100 feet. And in doing that, it actually pulled the building further away from Gay Street, pushed the building a little bit more into the known ledge that's out there, thus increasing the cost, as you heard Maya explain. So roadways were extended, the utilities were extended. We created a little bit more impervious surface, so we had additional stormwater management that was required. So when that happened, we're like, okay, that's too much money. Let's see what else we can do until try to maintain the buffer. So, or get a buffer. So if you want to go to the next slide. So what we've done here, and I know it's difficult to see, but there is a green outline of the building. If you around the building, that was the green line around the building, Chen. That was the 100-foot shift. So with that, we were getting about an 80 to 100-foot natural buffer up by the cul-de-sac of Laura Lane, which was good. Hence the cost that we ended up enduring. So what we've done now is we've shifted the building not quite 100 feet, but we've also rotated it clockwise 7 degrees. And what's important about this is when we just slid the building down, we pushed the upper half of it more into the ledge. So by rotating the building and not pulling it quite 100 feet away, that was a 100-foot shift. You can see we're further out of where that ledge is known to be. So by making this move, believe it or not, we've actually been able to maintain the buffer we talked about with the simple 100-foot shift. So if you look up at the end of the cul-de-sac, we're saying somewhere between 80 and 100 feet of the natural vegetation will remain right there. And we'll design this in such a way where we'll define the limits of work where basically a contractor can't cross. We'll have fencing up there. We'll mark trees as necessary to allow that to occur. The red solid lines that you see running around the roadway, that service road back there, that's some of the grading that we pulled away from the property line and brought it right down to the roadway, which allows for that buffer to remain. I think it's also important to point out, as you run parallel to Laura Lane, the green that you see there, we've been able to pull the grading away from there a little bit more and capture more buffer, even along that part of the street. Even though there's not a view to the building, there's still a view out across the fields. So one of the added benefits of this also, Chin, if you go to that green space by the field, whoops, go back one slide. That right there, because the building has pulled down and shifted a little bit, we've been able to extend the separation between the ring road and the play fields. And by doing this, we're able to keep some of the natural tree buffer out in front of the site. So as you recall, the theme we've been working on is a school in the woods, and having some mature trees out there will help buffer the school from the street, even though it's set quite a ways back, but also help play up on that theme. So we believe this is a nice compromise position. By not pulling the building quite so far away, by rotating at those 7 degrees, the extension of the utilities and the parking, as I mentioned, the amount of building that's in the ledge has all been reduced. The amount of stormwater retention will all be reduced, thus bringing us back to a cost that we think is more reasonable for a move like this. So that's a quick overview. We can get to the close-up if you want, Chin. This is just a zoom in on that corner, so you can see the amount of buffer that's there by the end of the cul-de-sac of Laura Lane. See the blue fire access trail, and just to be clear, this is about a 15-foot wide path in the woods, similar to what you see there now. It's not a roadway by any means, but it's an access to get a brush truck or small vehicles into the woods if there were an incident that either police or fire needed to get in there for. So that will be one of the first things that built project is to be constructed. So we maintain that access for emergency response, but also for neighbors in the community to continue to use the trails out back into the woods.
And Don, once the project is completed, I think I recall you saying, and I'd love to hear Chief Decker's weigh in here as well, that there's also an opportunity for the trucks to come in actually through paved, correct?
Right. So there's 2 possibilities, right? One is you could come in through the fire access trail that will be built right away. The other option, an alternate route, would be to come along the emergency access road that goes around the building and connect to the trail up in that southwest corner. So there are options there for access into the woods.
So as the fire chief, I'll weigh in on that. I think that's great. And as we spoke with the architects yesterday, one thing that I would do is I would stress that if that's going to add to make that connection at that point, if that's going to add a lot of money there, let's not do that. Because as long as we can get access directly off of Laurel Lane, like we have, I would prefer that access. That puts our bigger apparatus away from the school and away from the children, which I would prefer to keep our apparatus away from there. If we can put it there, no major additional costs, it's always great to have an extra way in. But I am more than willing to let that go if it's going to cost a fortune to do, because we already have one access way in. We have several access ways also along the trail itself. So we want to make sure, one, that the proposed fire access trail, the reconfiguration is done in such a fashion that these larger size trucks, so it's not like your Tahoes and, a Kubota or something like that going in there. It's a fairly sizable rig that we would have to be able to put in there, four-wheel drive, off-road capability, carrying, 500 gallons of water. So it's a larger sized vehicle, so we can't make a 90-degree turn in there. We can't be backing up, otherwise we'll be running trees over and stuff, and we don't want to do that. So as presented, I'm 100% fine with that. As I said, if we can add that little extra trail to pick it up at the school, that's always great to have that functionality. But if we can save money there, by all means, please do.
Great. Thank you. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think it's important too, and May have mentioned this, we're about 20% through the design process. We're in good shape. Obviously, we have a lot of the design complete, but we'll continue to develop this as we move forward. And if we see other opportunities for savings on the project, whether it be the amount of paving or some of the roadway design, and opportunities to enhance the buffer, which actually I failed to point out, even though we're maintaining some of this natural buffer that's being shown here, we're also looking to create some screening, even in that white space where you see the solid red lines, to enhance what's there now. So some more vegetation in there, perhaps some conifers that don't leaf out in the fall. So you have to create even more of a screen along there. If you move forward, this is what we call a cut fill analysis slide. I think we've shown this to you before, but what it starts to demonstrate is how the grades work here. All those solid lines are different elevations within the site, and the red that you see in the upper left corner, that's the known amount of ledge on the site. The green line, faint green line that's up into that ledge chain, that was the original move. You see where the building was originally?
The light green line,
Oh.
Shin, that runs through the depth of the ledge.
Up in the ledge portion.
Yeah.
The north, yeah, there you go.
There you go. Yes, thank you.
And if you
So
click
that
a
was the
couple more
first shift.
times.
And you can see how we pushed the building, slid further into that ledge. So now we basically pulled it back out to exactly where it was in the original design. So there's quite a bit of rock removal savings from what was done at the 100-foot shift. And same thing down below, where if that's a cut up there, it's a fill down where Chin's cursor is right now. So the idea is you try to create what we call a balanced site. So what you remove versus what you need to fill, you want it to be equal. So you're not bringing soil in or taking soil off, because the trucking costs can add up quickly. So that's a quick cut fill analysis for you. And then the last slide. Oh, and here the stars are the existing boring locations. Taking borings out on the site. We're still working within a lot of those borings that have been taken. And then the blue just highlights where we understand or believe the ledge to be. So. And then lastly, talked about this, but this represents some of the additional scope that we've backed off on from the 100-foot shift. With the site development and landscaping, the pavement, sidewalks, and curbing, the ledge removal, stormwater systems. And those are important because basically the way the stormwater works is we have to keep all of our water that falls onto impervious surfaces on site for a period of time before it dissipates and recharges into the groundwater. And everything that we have going on here is underground. So trying to shrink that from what we were showing at the 100-foot shift is important, and we've been able to do that. We think we're able to take some of the retaining walls around some of the lower levels that are filled and reduce that a bit. And then because the building's not quite so far away, we've reduced the length of travel for some of the utilities coming in off of Gay Street.
So before we get into the cost, I'd like to give Chief Silva an opportunity to comment. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if we have you. I did want to give you an opportunity if you have any thoughts or concerns with the design as it is.
Oh, thank you. I don't have any concerns really, particularly since if we can get fire apparatus in, we can get police apparatus in. I did have some initial concern, and of course we're always planning for the worst, that if there was some reason where the fire apparatus was in there first, or if we were in there first, I guess it makes no difference, would there be room to maneuver one or the other out of the way? That's really our only concern. And, I think realistically we can probably make it happen. I don't see anything that's jumping off the page at me. Again, as long as there's sufficient turning radius for fire apparatus, our vehicles are much smaller, thankfully. So we should be able to get by, even if, we're driving over a lawn or a cord or something else that you normally wouldn't be on if it were an emergency, as long as we can get through.
Great. And this is certainly, as we have been doing, we're going to continue consulting with you and Chief Deckers as we move through design development. So to the extent, these issues come up, we can certainly address them at that time.
Okay, great.
Question for maybe Don. Is there any downside to the 7 degrees? Did we lose anything on the light or, in the building or anything?
No, actually, it's worked out quite well for us. Just by rotating, you can imagine the building turning a little bit closer than what it would have been with just a straight 100-foot shift. So we basically brought it back in line where it was.
Okay, thank you.
So it's working quite well.
Don, this is Nancy. What's the distance between the house that's closest to the back corner of the school building now, and you've been putting a lot of emphasis on additional screening? What's your sense of what they could see of the school building without additional screening? Can you quantify that yet?
I can tell you when the leaves are out on the trees, you probably don't see the building at all, unless you try real hard to see through the woods.
Yeah.
When the leaves are off the tree, it'd be more of a filtered effect. But I think what's important to point out is the height of the building at that point. While it's a different mass than a house, it's a similar height to a home at about 30 feet. Clearly it's much bigger, but it's similar in height. So it would be a filtered effect, I guess, is the best way to.
And maybe point out the berm too, Don, just because I think that's important.
Right. Yeah. So with that grading, we're also looking at the possibility of doing some kind of a rounded berm through there, and then with plantings on top of that, it'll raise everything up a little bit. So it's in process, but we'll certainly do everything we can to minimize any of the impacts on that home and the end of our lane.
I'm just wondering if there's been any direct outreach to those abutters recently to have them be aware of this effort to provide the screening and everything. It'd be nice if they had a comfort level.
So we can certainly do that. I know the homeowners, and I'm happy to reach out to them.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the 2 houses.
Yep.
That
I
are
know
there.
those families.
Yeah, good.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the shift before we get into the project budget?
I have a question on the trail. The way we're showing it now, the trail is only accessible by Laura Lane. So is there, if community members come and park in that little trail parking area, how do they get to the trail? Do they have to kind of cut through to Laura Lane, or is there going to be access from the school?
Yeah, great question. We didn't get into that, but there still is access along right, along the edge of the drive. And if you continue all the way down, Chim, there's parking there across, which is teacher parking during the week, or even all the way down by the outfield of the baseball field down there. So you could actually park right there off the street and cross over and start walking on the trail down there.
Yeah, we're still planning on the idea of that being a trailhead that would then connect with the fire access trail.
Correct.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, ma'am, this is Chris.
Yep.
The proposed fire access trail, which is going to be constructed, and I don't know about the rest of the trail, but will that also be accessible? At least that portion that's being constructed? Could someone in a wheelchair at least access that?
So the plan is to put what's existing now. And I don't believe now it's accessible. I think just for cost purposes, if we were to pave it, that would be, at this point, I think that's not in the project budget. If that's something we want to do, we should discuss that because we are submitting this with the project budget. But the idea was always that this would be sort of replacing the existing trail.
I certainly defer to Don and to Tim, but I was under the impression that such trails would not have to be paved to be considered accessible. But I'll certainly defer.
I can't speak to that.
Yeah, there are certainly different strategies to make the trail accessible. As you know, right now, there's no treatment at all on that path. So at a minimum, you'd have to do some kind of a stone dust treatment to create the surface for someone who is physically challenged. That's not the plan right now, but we certainly can look at that.
And I don't know about the grade, though. I don't know how that would work either.
We'd have to look at that also, Tim. Yeah.
Chris, right now, if you're handicapped and you can walk, there's a lot of people that do it. But if you're in a wheelchair, it's all roots and rocks.
Right.
It's not even. I mean, if you had a special wheelchair that someone was going with you, maybe. But it's just natural. They got the trees out of the way so that the fire apparatus could goes down the trail.
Thank you. I've been part of some recent trail projects that have become, that the focus was to make them accessible. So I just didn't know if there was plans to make this accessible.
It would be, once the project's done, it would be accessible. I mean, at least to get to the same point there at the turnaround behind the building, it would be obviously accessible, down the paved way. But the actual fire access way down the bottom. Right.
Yeah, it's something we can explore further.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
I have one. Is there a reason why we stopped at 7 degrees? Was that there's a compromise between how it lined up versus rotating it even more off the ledge? Bedrock?
Yeah, one thing we were being cognizant of also, as Jim is pointing out down below, is some of the limitations with the buffer around the wetlands down on the southern side. The other, not a huge concern, but we try to maintain a north-south access through the spine, which allows your classrooms to be facing north and south, which is ideal for the daylighting on the building and sustainability. So those were the two primary drivers for this. I think if you started to rotate it some more, the building would have to, the lower left-hand corner of the building might start pushing back up into the ledge a little bit too. So we're kind of pivoting it a little bit the way it's shown right now.
I have a question. This is Brian. Don, later on in the project, will there be more test borings and things like that to explore the land and design development?
Yes. So as part of the feasibility study, which is often the case, the amount of funds that are allocated will allow you to do some borings on the site. we've always planned to do more borings and test pits, which will happen during the design development phase.
Actually, those are planned to happen very soon. We still have money left in the feasibility to come and look for that amendment. So we're going to be putting something together probably in the next month or so to
Right.
come.
Good point.
So that will help bring more accuracy to this whole conversation, correct?
Absolutely, because as you can imagine, Brian, we've been interpolating what we believe some of the other soils will be where we haven't done any borings or test pits yet. So, and in doing so, we're assuming there's some similar topography and similar soil conditions. So when we get to know more about it, we can even better address what's going on up there when we get more borings and test pits done.
Right. So it's important for everyone to know that as it moves to design development, all these details will be explored and maybe some more opportunities will present themselves. But the information they know will also increase. So the whole picture should become more accurate in terms of
Yes.
cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really, really, really rough estimate. And I think that's a very good point to make, Brian, that, we may not need the 900. We're hopeful that we won't need it all, but we're building it into the project budget just to make sure that, we're accounting for what we think is, if not sufficient, then it may be more than sufficient.
Yeah, I do want to just follow up on that. I think, as was mentioned, Don mentioned, I think Maya mentioned, we intend to look at in design development fairly early on about different ideas to try to reduce the cost, which we would do anyways, frankly, that, to find ways to relook at, present new ideas in front of the school department about what we might be able to do. So this is in some way, very much in a way, just to kind of make sure we have enough money, I think. But we intend to be very creative around looking at different ideas around cost, particularly around the site, because we are spending a lot of money. It's a big site development project. If you want, I can go into the cost, May. And
Yeah, why don't we move into cost?
okay, so just to remind people, the reason why we're doing this in such a sort of rushed way with the consecutive meetings is we're trying to submit on February 24th. And there's some time to put that submission together, but we also need to get keeping the MSBA in the loop around things. We need to get them a notification about what our budget is and cost, and that it'll match up to the design we're showing them on the 4th when we submit. We need to get something out actually 10 days earlier than that. So next week, I think we've sent them an initial notice, but next week we're going to send a more formal notice pending today. That would be the budget. So today we're going to vote on this budget and the submission of the schematic design package. This cost slide that you see here and all the cost slides that you're going to see coming up, they're the same slides in terms of layout that you saw last week. And what we've done is we've tried to change the color of the font on the things that have changed are in green. The font is in green. So that I'm going to, unless somebody wants to ask a question about it, I'm not going to go through, the whole thing that we did last week. I'm just going to go over the items that have changed, which I think basically boil down to the extra $900,000 that's been talked about. So you'll see that as kind of the thread running out. So this is the cost that the construction cost that we're currently looking at, $70,380,000, which is still under the target that we had set in June, I guess, last year, barely, but it is just under it. So when we look at the total project cost, the items that have changed here is the construction cost and the relevant contingency. So we have increased the contingency, in a pro rata basis to that construction change. So that puts us, as far as a new target, I mean, a new project cost at 87,820,000, below $330,000, roughly below the target set in June. Next slide, please. And we had looked at last time a comparison of the Hanlon Deerfield School to other similar schools that are current, that are contemporary with it. And it compares favorably, and it still does. Obviously, that change around 900,000 has added roughly $8 a square foot, so we're at $622 a square foot. Next slide, please. No change to this slide, I don't believe. And then this is the eligible cost for reimbursement. So, you know, because the project cost has changed and because our ineligibles have changed, because that 900,000 is in the site, which, as you recall from last week, is you know, already significantly over the MSBA cap. The total eligible cost has changed to 47 million. I have to get rid of, I have my view thing here has my panel, excuse me, my panel has all the four members down the side of it, but the eligible costs have changed to 47,124,000 plus or minus dollars. Again, reminding people this is subject to MSBA audit, which we talked about. This rate is the same as we talked about last week. So applying the reimbursement rate, the final reimbursement rate with the incentives to the eligible project cost, the maximum total facilities grant is $18,543,427. The total project cost, again, minus the maximum facilities grant, obviously the math changes around the town share, which is now $69,276,959, and it was $68,347,579. So that has, you know, the effective reimbursement rate has reduced slightly because, again, all of those costs around the site were ineligible, to 21.12%. Next slide, please. So this is the bridge funding. I don't know if you want to talk about this, Mayor, or we want to discuss, well, we can get questions for one thing, but we could also do, I don't know if you had any discussion around the tax impact you wanted to bring up.
Why don't we stick to the project budget for now? So yeah, if you can go back. So as you know, the town share did go up. We discussed town impact last week. I believe that this won't have a significant impact on the numbers we gave last week, although I know Pam just, you know, we didn't give these numbers to her in time, and so she hasn't been able to run them. But Pam, would you agree that while there may be some change to those numbers, you don't think it would be significant to the ones we gave last week?
Yes, that's not going to be significant, but I will rerun with these numbers now. Yep.
Yep. Thanks, Pam, and apologies for not giving you the numbers till last night.
That's fine. Yep.
The increase is 1.5% roughly. I mean, when you look at just the straight math of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we will have those revised, the town impact revised numbers. But again, don't anticipate a huge impact to those. So, I want to sort of pause here and talk about, because this is what we'd be voting today. We would be voting the project budget and the schematic design submission. So I want to be able to address any questions or have a discussion about this project cost.
And this is Brian. I just wanted to clarify for everyone that cost per square foot that you did with comparison of other buildings, that's total project cost, including soft costs?
It's construction cost, so it includes the site cost, but it doesn't include the project, the soft costs.
Okay, so it's construction and site.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any questions? I think that Ashland, I think I mentioned Ashland last week. They just passed their project. Do you know, anyone know, Tim, do you know what that square footage amount was?
It's our project, so I should know, but
It's here, it's on the screen, it's
Oh, it is?
645.
no,
Oh.
but the square footage, do you know, Chin, what the number?
Oh, the square footage, they're just, in terms of size of the building, they're just a little bit smaller than I think they're 80 or 90,000, so it's not hugely different from our project.
Yeah. All right, are there any other questions about the project budget? No? Okay, why don't we get to the bridge funding? So as I mentioned, well, as we discussed and we voted, when we voted for option 3, if you recall in the project schedule, that meant that we would delay the big vote on the project cost to the fall. That delay could have caused some increase, and it would have caused an increase in the project budget by about $700,000 according to our cost estimator, because we were delaying the start of construction for 5 months, which would put us in the middle of winter. So first you have sort of the time value of money, a delay of 5 months, there's an escalation cost that you need to factor in. In addition, we thought we would have to include some potential mitigation money for the fact that we would be starting in winter, which is a difficult time to start an outdoor site project. So because of that, we thought, let's get a jump on it and let's go to town meeting, see if we can ask the town for what we're calling bridge funding, which is basically enough to fund a summer and fall work on design development. And that will put us, when we go to town meeting in the fall, in a good position. If we get the approval at town meeting, we can immediately go into the bid document portion of the project. So, and it would keep us on the original schedule of breaking ground in July of 2022, which is a good time to start the site work. So this is a breakdown of what we would ask for at town meeting. The Compass fee at 6 months at $20,000 per month is about $120,000. The Compass is also going to be doing some cost estimating work, or outsourcing some cost estimating work. We think that's about $17,000 during this phase. And then Doran Whittier's design services during this phase would be about 1.2 for basic services and 86 for extra services. Don, do you just want to speak to what the extra services would entail?
Yeah, those are the additional borings, test pits, survey work that will be going on.
Great. So the total amount that we are budgeting for the bridge funding request in the spring is about 1.46. I think that, to round up, $1,460,000. Again, this amount isn't in addition to what we would ask for in the fall. This would actually come off the amount we would ask for in the fall. And this amount, if the design passes, is subject to the same reimbursement that the project costs would be subject to as well. So, so that's the estimate.
Maybe one clarification, Mayor, on the bridge funding. So, we probably should have had a slide. This wouldn't be looking, obviously, until it were approved by the town. If it were approved in June, roughly time frame, or May or June. But so the June meeting, we are going to be coming in the next month for. There's some time still within the feasibility phase that's left, that we will be coming for Compass for 2 months, for an extension. And then there is we talked about the geotech and the survey coming in the next month. So I just wanted to make sure people realize that was another component that we probably should have pointed out.
Yeah. So, right. So, so we still have about $290,000 unallocated in the feasibility funds, the 1.75 that was authorized at the 2018 town meeting. So we anticipate using about 108 of that, or no more, 100 and
maybe 148.
I can.
It's
I can get the
112 plus 40. 112 plus 40, 152.
152 of that, and that would be for Compass fees to get us through to the summer, and also to get us through to April, and also some survey work and geotech work that is appropriate for the feasibility phase. Again, this is, that's still part of the 1.75 that was authorized. And we will be coming to the SBC for approval for those. But that's separate from this bridge funding discussion. I think Tim just wanted to point out that you'll see those two. We're allocating what had been previously been unallocated funds from the feasibility study.
So with the remaining funds for feasibility phase and then this bridge funding, if it gets approved, this will enable no pause to the professional services?
I mean, there's a pause that's happening we have a period where there's the pause that we have now, which means from schematic design to getting to the MSBA board, and particularly to hear from that facilities, the final sort of staff workaround we need, which we'll probably hear in the next in March or April. So there is the pause. There's not a significant amount of actual design work going on in that period, but it does mean we don't have to wait the 6 or 8 months, obviously, or whatever we were talking about getting to October.
Correct. So I shouldn't have said a pause, but it's not like we're putting anything on hold. This is allowing us to not put this on hold.
Yeah, exactly.
To make the schedule that you outlined.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. To meet the schedule as if we had the town meeting, the full cost town meeting this spring.
Yep. Which ultimately the goal, as Maya mentioned, is to get to a construction start of, fall of 22.
I also just wanted to point out, and Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but what's labeled as extra services, sounds like these are things that are in the original proposal and plan, right?
Yes, extra services, sometimes they're just called additional services. It's just work that's outside our basic services, which is.
I want to clarify this, is that the definition of basic service and extra service that is per the MSBA contract definition.
Right.
It's not additional work that they're all required work to be performed in order to have the project completed. However, MSBA, their definition, they defined it that some category of works are basic service and some category of work is extra service. And that's this is more of a MSBA nomenclature than anything else. And I wouldn't say this is extra service, because if you don't do the service, we're not going to get the project done. I think that's.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I think I wanted people to realize that this isn't additional funds beyond what was already in the plan.
I'd like to just add one more level of clarification as well. The extra services in the design development phase that are outlined here are actually permitting. So as Chin, I think, and Tim had mentioned, we're going to get started. We would get started on doing the borings and test bits and survey work within the next month with the remaining funds that are currently allocated, and that these would, in DD, would be to initiate the permitting process.
And would be, just a final thing on that. Those are all the extra services here would all be, unlike the basic services, which are going to be spent, provided they get funded. The extra services are only spent as they get incurred. Then they're a budget rather than an actual fee at this stage.
Okay, any other questions? I don't know if we have any more slides. I think that might be it.
I think that's it.
So this is the last chance for discussion on this before we go to a vote.
May I just a quick suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry, are we asking, is the vote going to be for the 1.46?
No, the vote is on the project budget. So actually, Rob, Chin, if you can go back to that slide. I just wanted to let people know, we had already voted to go with option 3 in the bridge funding. So I just wanted to let everybody know what that amount was. Okay. But what we're voting today is the $87,850,386 project cost. And if you recall last week, we kind of went through the budget and how that was broken down. The only change that, as Tim pointed out today, as Tim pointed out today, was the increase from last week based on this new site work. But that's the number we would vote today, the 87,850,386 number.
Thank you.
I just want to thank Doran Whittier for all the work that they've done and Compass over the last few days. I mean, I think we all are very invested in, getting this right. And I thought the explanation today really made sense to me. I feel like they've arrived at a good solution. So thank you for doing that work.
Yeah, they've been really, really busy over the past week and a half. And I think this design is very well thought out. It was really, I think it's a big improvement, and we really thank you for picking up on this issue when we could and designing accordingly.
Welcome.
John's happy, so that's all that matters. All right, if there's no other questions or comments, I think we can move to the vote, to the action items. No? Okay. So the first vote, I will need a motion to submit the schematic design to the MSBA as shown with the project costs that we discussed today.
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, I'll do the roll call. Is Ken still here? Ken Aries? I know he had to step. He may have had to step off.
He is not, Maya.
Okay. Brian Baer?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Chris?
Sorry. Yeah.
Chris? Thanks. Sarah?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Mary Kate?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Abby?
Yep.
Nancy?
Yes.
Lemma?
Yes.
Josepha? Josepha? I see you. All right, we'll come back to Josepha. Tony? Tony may have stepped off too. Emily?
Yes.
Do we have Josepha? No. Okay. And I am a yes. So the motion has carried. Can I get a motion to approve the payment of invoices for this month totaling $75,765.22 for the period ending January 31, 2021, as recommended by Compass? These are two invoices, one for Compass in the amount of $28,543 and one for Doran Whittier in the amount of $47,222.22. So can I get a motion to approve these invoices?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Brian?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sarah? John?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Pam? Mary Kate?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Yes.
Nancy? Lemma? Josepha?
Yes.
Emily? And I am a yes. Motion is carried. Okay, is there any new business? Nope. All right. Short meeting today. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. Brian?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Sarah? John?
Yes, and nice work on the shift and rotate.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Yes.
Charlie? Pam? Mary Kate?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Lemma?
Sorry. Yes.
Josepha? No. Emily?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you to the chiefs for joining us today. Thank you to all of you. Great work. And we have a schematic design submission. Very exciting. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and thank you as always for your hard work.
Thank you.